What is up everyone, welcome to this tutorial. Make sure to head over to the website and grab the free worksheet. You don't have to sign up for the mailing list or anything, just grab that. If you're working digitally, you can load in these files into your software and then just draw over top, and if you're working traditionally, make sure to print it out. My approach to learning how to draw anything new is to first break it down to its simplest forms, then building complexity over top of it, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the base shape and then add more on top of that. That way we can stop at any point in the process and then focus on the one thing that we need to improve on before moving forwards. For the base shape of the eye, we have basically a box that's on a tilt, right? So you have towards the center of the face, you have a sharp incline, then a curved line. And that's the top lid. While for the bottom lid, you have a curve that's kind of flat across the bottom, and then a sharp incline again. And then we're also adding in a curved line for the crease of the eye. So on this first page, we're going to copy the examples that you see. You don't have to get these examples perfectly copied. It's just getting the basic idea of the shapes that you can use to describe the eye. Obviously, this is kind of stylized. This isn't perfectly realistic, but this gives you the basic idea of the shapes, and this will help you draw from imagination instead of always relying on reference. Obviously, do practice from reference. It's always useful, but these worksheets are designed to help simplify down. That way you'll get a quicker grasp of the basics, and that way you can move towards realism if you want to later. Don't be shy about erasing. Do this as many times as you need to, and then once you're done this page, make sure to try to do some from imagination in your sketchbook, like draw some of these base shapes just to see if you retain the information, because it's important to be able to practice from imagination on a regular basis, and then doing that between each of these pages will help you retain the information longer. So go through, take your time on this. If this feels very complicated, take your time. Don't be shy about reusing the same page over and over again multiple times. Getting this down before moving on to the next stage will make everything easier. If you try to learn everything at once, you're gonna end up being overwhelmed, and that's not gonna help you in any way. Drawing is all about learning how to build good habits, so doing the things one stage at a time will make this much easier. I wish I had understood this earlier on, because this would have helped me tons, and this will save you lots and lots of time. Once you're done with page one, move on to page number 2, and then make sure that you're comfortable with page 1 before moving on. For the second page, we're adding the dark of the eye, so we're adding a circle within the space of the base shape. And what you'll notice is the top portion of the dark of the eye is cut off, and this would give you a natural expression. If we saw the entirety of the dark of the eye, it would appear, the face would appear, well, the eyes would appear surprised, right? During surprised facial expressions, the eyes are expanded, but the dark of the eye is like fully visible. But during natural expressions, you usually get eyes that look like these. So copy from the examples like we did on the last page. And once you're done this, repeat the process. A lot of this is just copying until you understand the shapes, and just keep doing this until you get it. Like, it's going to be frustrating at first, but if you do this enough, it'll become really easy. On page number 3, we're adding in the highlight of the eye, and the way you do this is you draw in the shape at the top before you add in the darks of the eye, right? So if you darken in the eye and then try to erase away, it's going to look messy. So what you want to do is you want to make sure to, when you draw in the lines of the base shape and the circle of the eye, is draw in the highlight shape that you want to use, and then make sure that you leave that space empty, right? So at the top of the page, I've shown you the example of where I've drawn in the shape of the highlight and then filled in the dark after. I'm obviously using very stylized versions of highlights here. You can look up more natural ones, but these ones I find are very aesthetically pleasing. These are the ones that I like to use. So copy from the examples again, repeat the process. I know that this is very repetitive, but this is the only way you'll be able to retain the information, and it'll make it much easier, right? So if we keep doing this for every step of the process, then each step becomes really, really easy. And then you won't have to think about it, right? You want to get to a point where everything comes out naturally, where you can just enjoy the drawing process without having to strain to remember how to draw something. And doing this repetitively will help you get there. Once you're done with this page, make sure to draw some of these in your sketchbook and see if you're if you're able to come up with eyes that you like. Also, don't be shy about erasing. You do this as many times as it takes. You know, it's okay to make mistakes. Drawing isn't a skill that comes naturally to anyone. Once you're done with this, move on to page number 4. On page number 4, we're working with the hairs of the eye, basically the eyebrows, the eyelashes. Calling them the hairs of the eye sounds funny, but that's basically what it is. The trick with drawing natural hairs, right? So we want hairs that look natural. It's all about getting the curves right? And also getting the collections of hairs right. So the first exercise, what we're going to do is we're going to repeat these curves across horizontally, right? So just copy these curves until they feel natural, right? It's gonna take a bit of practice, especially if you're not experienced with drawing curved lines before. This is tricky. Like, this took me a while to get a handle of, and even still now I struggle quite a bit with it. But do this top exercise, and if you want to do this exercise more, right, like maybe if you feel like you're still struggling after doing the first 2, you can do this exercise again at the top. So do this in pencil if you're working traditionally, so you can erase away and do it again if you need to. So for the eyelashes, for the second exercise, make sure that you do draw collections of hairs where one or two of the hairs are longer than the rest, and then there's shorter hairs closer by, right? So if you look at the examples here, to get the natural feel, we have these. The lengths of the hairs aren't all the same, right? Each of the hairs have individual characteristics. They're shorter and some of them are curved slightly different. And this gives it a natural feel, right? If you, in real life, all the hairs aren't going to grow the same length. Some of them are going to stand out, and that's what you're copying here on the second exercise. For the last exercise, we're drawing eyebrows. So if you want a step-by-step tutorial on drawing the eyebrows, I have a tutorial on the website where you can see it line by line, but this here we're going to basically practice the base shape first, right? So the guidelines of the eye. So when we're drawing these hairs, we want to block in the shape of the eyebrow first as a guideline. That way it'll be much easier to draw in the individual hairs. That way you don't have to that way you can draw in the hairs without worrying about messing up the shape. So the eyebrow, the base shape is made up of a box and a triangle. So it's kind of like a box with a tail on it. So on the left side, draw in these basic shapes, and then on the right side, we're going to draw in the individual hairs. For the individual hairs, on the left side of the box, if you look at the top example on this page, we're drawing in hairs that move upwards first, and then they start to curve outwards on the right side, right? So it's almost like a wave that's very steep at the front end, and then the wave falls flatter towards the outside of the eyebrow. So you look at these hairs, we see the movement. The lines towards the right are longer, while the ones towards the left are shorter. And the one underneath it, it's the opposite, right? The right side and the left side are switched because the eyebrow is moving in the opposite direction. Make sure that you get used to drawing these hairs following the direction of the shape of the eyebrow. That's why we put in that guideline. That way it's much easier to see which way things are moving, and you'll be able to draw in these curved lines without worrying about messing up the eyebrow. Make sure to practice this in your sketchbook, because this is challenging at first, especially at first. These hairs, like understanding how to draw in these hairs can be very challenging, especially if you're trying to capture that like natural feel of these are individual hairs instead of just like a block of dark, you know? So try to do these in your sketchbook and do it until you get comfortable. It's going to take a little bit of time, but if you look at the examples and copy, it'll be much easier to see how to do this. So do this until you're comfortable, and then we'll move on to the next page. Now on to the last page of this workbook. We're going to combine, at the top, we're going to combine what we've learned, right? So we're drawing in the eye with the highlight and the eyelash and the eyebrows. I haven't given you any guidelines for this because at this point I'm hoping that you'll get to a point where this feels a little bit more comfortable. This can still be challenging, but try to practice this until you're comfortable, right? So if this top portion is too difficult, make sure to focus in on the step that you struggle on the most, right? So pay attention to what is challenging. Is drawing in the eyelashes the hardest part, or the eyebrows the hardest part? Maybe you're not capturing the highlight that you want. Make sure to go back and practice that specific step until you're comfortable, right? That's the whole point of breaking things down into steps, is to make sure that you get each step to a point where it's easy, right? So that the entirety of the eye becomes easy. So copy from the examples at the top. Now towards the bottom, what we're going to do is add in some shading lines. So I usually work in inks. That's why I draw in lines, like very specific shading lines. If you're working in pencil, you can do like a gradient shade if you want to. Make sure that you add significantly more shading right underneath the top eyelid, right? So if you look at these examples, there are more lines right underneath the top eyelid on the whites of the eyes, right? So I'll put it up on the screen. I'll zoom in so you can to help you see what I'm talking about, because it's kind of hard to describe exactly what it is. But if you look at these examples, and compare the examples at the bottom to the ones at the top, you'll see that I've added way more shading right underneath the top eyelid, because this really helps sell the dimension of the eyes, especially contrasted against the highlight, right? So the highlight really pops once you add in these shading lines. Once you're done this, that's it for this tutorial. Make sure to check out the website for more worksheets and tutorials. I'll be making more videos on the different features of the face and hand and torso and all the other good stuff involved in drawing people, gonna be covering more topics. If you're interested in that, make sure to stick around. If you want to stay in touch, sign up for the mailing list. That's the best way for me to keep in touch. I know that subscribing feels like the best thing, but mailing list is the only thing where an algorithm can't get in your way. That's why mailing list is the most reliable place to stay in touch. Make sure to practice regularly if you're getting into drawing. That's the best way to improve. I'll see you guys in the next one. Toodles. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.